Okay. If I can get everybody's attention, please, I'm going to ask that you let us get started here. This is Monday, April 10th, 2017. It's 4:30-ish in the Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. We're going to roll right downhill tonight. We've got a busy schedule tonight, so we're going to ask that everybody be cooperative with us. Number 2, we have a public hearing for consideration of transit grant application. Mr. McGregor.
Good evening. This resolution is for our annual apportionment from the DOT for STA and FTA funding. It looks like we'll have a little bit of an increase in STA funding. The dollar figure, where I have that up, $229,590 for STA and $401,759,000 in FTA. On the traffic improvement plan, the TIP associated with our capital purchasing, I have 4 buses on there, 2 medium duty and 2 light duty. We currently have 2 of the medium duties budgeted in our budget. Should an absorbent amount of money come available for capital, it's good to have those numbers in there so you can get them replaced.
How much amount of money?
Well, if the matching comes through on the medium duties, it'll be $27,383 per bus, and then the light duties will be $14,850. So it's an 15% match with those grants. So the previous bus that we've bought with only with our money. The 2 of the buses, the 2 medium duties, are higher on the DOT has a scoring ranking based on the number of miles and the age of the bus. It's called the PTMS ranking. The 2 medium duties that are at the top of the list were within 5 points of being replaced last year. So they have a pretty strong likelihood of getting grant funded this year.
Good deal. And
we definitely have had some problems with those too. So it'd be nice to get them rolled out and replaced with some new ones. But that's pretty much it. If you have any questions, I guess I'd be answering those.
any questions, council?
No, thank you. Thank you.
Nick, where'd we get you from? Just hold on to that till after.
I'm from Iowa.
That's right. Okay, good deal. Next, we have a public hearing, consideration of a permanent encroachment agreement with Martha Wolf for encroachment into Washington Street right-of-way at 313 Washington Street, Burlington, Iowa. Mr. Tisland.
Yeah, show a map, and then Jesse, our engineer, has some information as well. This is a request to place a deck off of the front of the property at 3013 Washington Street, just down the street here from City Hall. This is a residential structure. These are a couple photos of where they're looking to place the deck. There's an existing doorway on Washington Street right away. It's kind of hard to see with the lights here, but and wanting to have the deck come off of that doorway. Unfortunately, there's a light pole right adjacent to the doorway, but they're looking to maintain the minimum standards through the encroachment is 4 feet. This is a little more unique than some of our other encroachment requests in that most of those are for ADA access into a site through a handicap accessible ramp or stairs, as well as some barriers for public use such as outdoor seating. This would simply be a deck that could be used for access for the property there at 313 Washington Street. I'm going to show on the PowerPoint here just some information from the public works standpoint and their standards. So as Eric was saying, here's just some of the stats. The proposed location is on the picture there. The existing sidewalk is 11 foot 5 inches wide. The clearance between the building and the base of that light there is 7 foot 3 inches. And with the proposed structure, it would cut that down to 4 foot 7 inches. Next slide here is basically a mock-up of what they're proposing to attach to the structure. The biggest number on there is the depth.
of the porch. It's 32 inches into the right-of-way. Everything else, you know, is fairly inconsequential. And then on the next slide, we looked into the ADA ramifications of adding this on. They do provide for a 48-inch traveled width around poles and everything. It's the graphic on the left there towards the bottom, that 48-inch minimum, you know, around a pole. So it is within ADA compliance for handicapped people. And as long, I don't have a really good detail on, you know, how high the support is off the ground, but it looks like if you look to the right picture there, the area of cane detection, it looks like you would be able to pick it up with a cane as well. So from what I can see, everything is ADA compliant. It's just up to everybody here whether, you know, the encroachment is acceptable for this type of structure.
Jim, you want to add anything on that?
This is really a preference issue on your part. This is a policy, I don't have anything to add. They're saying they're okay with it. It's just a matter of whether you feel this is acceptable to the public or not.
What's our minimum's been? It have been 5 feet.
What happened we had an issue come up with over by hopefully yours.
Yeah, generally it's 5, and Jesse might be
Right.
able to talk a little bit more on that.
So that was our original determination, was that, you know, it's 5 feet. But as we got to looking into it closer, you know, they'll let you go that 60-inch minimum that you see in the left picture, but if your 48-inch restriction is for less than 2 feet, so around a pole or something like we're doing here, they'll let you get by with it as long as that restriction isn't over 2 feet through travel way.
But with hopefully.
I think they were less than 4 feet even.
Was it less than 4 feet and we
Yeah.
had to get them to 4 feet there?
Yeah, they had to remove the pole, which got them more than 4 feet ultimately, but the
this-
uniqueness of this too is that most of the time it's for ADA access to a building. This is just a deck off the front. They would like to use, I guess, for fire escape or whatever it may be, but it's just unique that it's not providing access to the building, so we wanted to just note that. It's a little different than what we've had be brought forward to the council before, and our encroachment policy just talks about preserving the sidewalk and for the property owners and for the city of Burlington, and reducing and minimizing encroachments where deemed necessary. But just wanted to bring the uniqueness of it, point that out to you, that it's just different than what we've had before. So.
Right on, right on.
But it's a policy that you guys get to choose what you want to do with it.
And Tom is here. I don't know if he wanted to say anything in specific other than what we've covered.
Well, other than.
Tom, can I get you to come, can I get you to come up and give us your name and address? And yeah, please do, since you're here, share with us, please.
My name is Tom Wolf, and I'm representing Martha. And the issue we have is that it originally had a double front door, which over the years was sealed up. I don't know if the side that was up there shows it. And where that is located, the stairway from the second floor comes right down to that doorway you see right there. And our concern is if there was some sort of need to get out of the building, those doors should be able to open. And that would just basically be a platform for someone to get over or be rescued from. And it's, the plan showed it as being 32 inches, which is basically enough to open the doors.
So there's no steps involved?
There's
on
no
the
steps.
sidewalk,
It's,
just a-
it's right against the building. As you can see, the sidewalk slopes. It'll be right out those double doors and have a railing
Just a
around.
small, okay.
Yeah. And it's metal.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay.
Council, do you guys have any other?
So, in reference to your 5 feet, then we're down to 4.7. Is that the way I'm reading that?
Right. But it's only, the 4.7's only where the light pole's at.
Where the
rest
light-
of it's 6
Yeah.
feet, so there's 5 feet. So
Right.
I don't see that for me being an issue.
I'm good. You good?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
Good deal. Thanks again, Tom. Okay, next we have consideration of plan specifications for the 2017 flood mitigation Phase 5.
We have Leo Foley here,
Leo.
E&K, so we can kind of go over what this project's looking for.
All right, here we go.
Axel Foley. I've been waiting to say that. I better squeeze it in. I'm sure you have.
Leo Foley with Veenstra and Kim. Okay, a lot of this presentation, a lot of you have seen before, but I thought since the plans are, it's been a long time in planning and design, and we're finally here to start for the advertising for the public hearing. Phase 5 demolition, the restoration, construction costs, schedule, permit status, our next steps. That's what I wanted to go through. Of course, this is what we have now. I think everybody's seen that. This one, I think you guys have seen, but the blue shows our flood wall footing. The footing, I think I've told you, there's gonna be two rows of H-piles that go down 50 foot, the whole length of that footing.
Wow, gee.
On the downstream side where you don't have sheet pile, there's gonna be sheet pile also. On the upstream side, where the port building is and where the sheet pile ends, we're gonna do additional sheet pile to keep from flow coming underneath of us. The red line just shows the minimum extent of excavation. The purple line, of course, shows where the flood wall is. This is demolition and construction staging. The orange is the extent of the demolition. So all of the orange will be demolished for the wall and for the foundation, and then will have to be restored. The yellow is construction staging, lay down areas that they're gonna need during construction. The whole staging area and demolition area will be fenced off with chain link fencing and gated, so people have to come in and out through gates.
How much total space, do you have an idea how much total space that is of the orange that's actually?
I do not right now. I would gather 3 or 4 acres. I
Yeah,
can
I
find
didn't
it.
know it was gonna be quite that big of a.
Yes.
Okay.
This parking lot up in here, because of that, we have to redo that parking lot in order to get our wall in there and all that, and to make the grades work right. So that from there down is gonna be a new parking lot, just to change the grade slightly.
How much more can we get, like another, like couple levels for a couple?
It's good, the wall will get us there. Okay, so this is what our Phase 5 restoration is gonna look like. So that's the kind of the looking down the streets, you'll be able to look out on here, the green space in here. This will all be a type of concrete. There'll be basically a path that runs along here, all the way out to the bottom. So that's how that's gonna be the Phase 5 restoration. Little bit on the schedule. Advertised for public hearing today, the public hearing, April 17th. Then we post the notice to bidders on April 18th. We receive bids on May 10th. Council to award construction, of course, if everything goes right, on May 15th. Notice to proceed after Steamboat Days on June 30th. Substantial completion, meaning complete enough so they can have Steamboat Days the next, on the 18th, so almost a year construction to get this thing done. Final completion, September 30th. Oh, sorry about it's not quite as big. Costs, I think we've been over before. The underground concrete and foundation is where we had a big number that we didn't expect to be quite so big. I think $2.5 million on the underground. So that means for the whole project, a construction cost estimate of about $6.5 million. And then we feel because of the type of conditions, river, all of that you should at least have 10% contingency available during the construction, which is pretty normal. That gets you to the 7.2 million. This shows what essentially the wall's gonna look like. So on the left-hand side, that's the wall. You'll see the little marks here, and that's where these struts go in, and then the temporary wall goes between it. I think as we talked about, that wall's gonna be at about the same height as the fence that's down there now, which is about the 100-year flood. So if we all are lucky, maybe we never even see this put up, but it could be put up this year. I mean, that's the luck of the draw. You just never know. I built one that was a 500-year flood in Burlington, one of my very first projects when I was a lot younger than I am today. Or not in Burlington, excuse me, Hannibal. In Hannibal,
I was saying, man, your work isn't very good, because I don't know.
Hannibal, Missouri. And I remember one of the structural engineers told me, "You'll never see this project tested." And then 2001 or 2, whatever it was, they had close to the 500-year levee, and they were talking about putting sandbags on top of it. Wow. So you never know. And since that time, I don't think they've ever really tested that one. But this one, we know that wall is going to protect a lot up to the 100-year, and gonna make maintenance around here a way different issue. This is just giving you some other views of what that's going to look like. You'll see these metal plates on top, and you take those plates off, and that's how the panels sit right down in there. Nick and his crew are all excited about being able to put this thing up. They've gone to Davenport. Davenport has showed theirs off many a times how well they can put it together. The bidder that gets this for putting up the wall will put the whole thing up before he's done. So that's part of our specifications. We did deliver plans and specifications to engineering and to planning today, 100% done. So the bidder that gets this has to install it all the way up before it's done. This is just showing what the railing in general will look like when there's not a wall. There's places where there's no wall because they'll have complete temporary walls in those places, and they'll have to be railed off. This is kind of what that railing would look like. This is what the patterns will look like in the concrete. We've worked with your staff quite a bit to make sure that this is going to be a type of block that'll be easily to maintain, easy to replace if there's a problem. The same with the concrete patterns. This is going to be a concrete that's going to just be sandblasted so that they can easily replace it and make the pattern. A lot of times projects like this, color becomes a problem. We're going to have the color be a very natural color. So we're thinking ahead, trying to make sure everybody's operate and maintain and be able to get this thing correct. This just shows pictures of the future, the complete build out in some future stage. We're not really focusing on this. I just wanted people to see that's the goal, that's where we're going. We haven't talked a lot with you guys, but we have talked with your staff a lot about lighting, different types of light for different areas. Generally, you'll see this. The lighting is not supposed to be a feature of this project. There's other things that we're showing off. The lighting's supposed to just fit in and look nice. So there'll be 3 basic types of lighting. At the flood wall, you'll see wall like this. There's also going to be some seating lighting, so there's concrete benches that will be there, and you'll see lighting in the seating. But in general, you'll see relatively shorter poles by the river, higher poles as you get to the parking lot, and then in the middle of the parking lot, of course, that kind of pole. You see a lot of this directional lighting. So up near the port in the amenity of the auditorium building, you'll see a lot of directional lighting. Where we have the flags for the Veterans Memorial, you'll have a lot of directional type lighting. And this just shows the whole plan again, making sure that this first phase fits in with the whole big picture of the future phases on lighting. Again, that now we just focus back onto phase 5 for lighting. Again, like I was telling you, this is some of the directional type of lights, that we have in mind that are now spec'd into the specifications. This is an interesting one. We decided how are we going to do lighting, and they were worried about, do we want to put like lighting on the flood wall? Well, we decided we didn't want to actually put lighting on the flood wall. The landscape architects decided the flood wall would look, you're trying to emphasize other stuff, not the wall itself. But wherever we have openings out to the river, they're going to have a lighted railing. So they put lighting in the railing, and then the railing swings back. It'll look really cool, yeah. So that's just showing you a little bit of that feature. Okay, another thing that people had talked about that maybe everybody wasn't clear about, I think the steering committee and the staff is, but the intent, of course, is to have this river walk that goes all the way through the project. The port building, eventually to have some kind of building here, but right now to have a connection, and that connection means we take this part of the port building off. So that's what everybody needs to know, is that comes off so we can build our wall, and it gives us more space. We've talked to the people at the port, we've talked to your public works, I think everybody's in favor. So this is kind of, again, what it looks like now, what it'll look like then, and then this picture, which didn't show up quite as great, shows what the final product will look like in that area. And again, that's all in there. Next thing is I wanted to talk about permits. I talked to Kelly Stone, is the head of the section that gives you a permit for floodplain work like this at the DNR. We had to provide him enough modeling and enough thing to get what's called a no-rise certification. Saying this project is not going to cause a rise during the 100-year. We have modeled it extensively, remodeled it for him, and he has pretty much said, we're happy with the no-rise certificate. He hasn't given me the paperwork yet, but even today he said, I don't have any issues with the no-rise. That's not going to be a problem. You'll see this phase had no pump stations in it. We knew the pump stations come in a future phase. This shows a pump, I think, one of your pumps. So what he wanted to do is he wanted to see how much pumping capability you had during a flood. So I had your staff put together what pumps you had, and then what they made us do is model a 100-year flood on the Mississippi River, close you won't close gates, but the gate on the upstream where we have to redirect flow, and we'll have to on very upstream of the port. What happens if you get a 10-year rain right over the port building and the auditorium during the 100-year flood? That very, very rarely happens, but that's like they consider that the worst case situation that could ever happen. So you're going to get a 6-inch rain right on top of when you're having a 100-year flood. How do you get that flow out of there? So your staff told me you have 3 pumps that pump 1,200 gallons a minute. Those are big pumps. It's 3,600 gallons per minute can be pumped. We figured out you're going to need at least 4, maybe 6 more of those if you got this flood. So what the state is going to make us do is write a letter that's going to say the city has the ability, and if it's predicted you're going to get the 100-year storm, then the city will have a location they can get flood, they can get pumps. And there's a pump supplier that's relatively close. They're out of Kansas City, but they have somebody that one of their salesmen's like 1 or 2 hours from here. They can produce 3,000 gallon per minute pumps. That's monster pump. Yours are 6-inch, these are 12-inch. 12-inch pumps, and they produced 52 of them in 2 days for Cedar Rapids. I think it was last year. 52 of those in 2 days they got to. So what we'll have to do is have a plan here that if you get the 100-year flood, and you know, here we'll predict a 100-year flood a week ahead of time. If you get the 100-year flood, then you probably will have to go get pumping to have it on hand. And if, as you can see from that pump right there, that's the situation they don't want to have. They don't want to see you get in a situation where you got so much water, it's inundating the pumps and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a wise move. We'll put that plan together. I can have it to him tomorrow, actually, and I think we'll be fine. But Their job really is to look at the worst-case scenario.
Right on.
And what they don't want to do is have you build a flood protection project, not have a pump station yet, and get a flood on the interior and have
That
a
would be
worse
good.
problem.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Have a worse problem. And I will tell you, Rock Island has a major flood protection project built by the Corps of Engineers, and they have no pump stations. So they do this temporary pumping every single year. Every time they have to, they put these temporaries on. So it's not something that won't be approved. It'll definitely get approved. But you just need to come up with a solid plan in writing that tells them at this elevation, the city does this. And I can provide that for you. Oh, the next thing is that, whoops. You doing it? Go to the last slide. Second to last slide. It's the one that showed that one right there. Okay. This is, so our next phase, we talked about doing a pump station. This is a big pump station down in New Orleans, but it shows very, very nicely what's going on here. You're not pumping a lot of head. You're not pumping very high. You're pumping from one side down here, up over a wall. Sanitary pumps, your wastewater director, they'll pump 30, 40 feet. You're gonna have to pump 10 to 15 feet. So it's not a huge head, but still they're big pump stations. So the next slide, and we showed this to you in a very early version of our planning, is you have a lot of different options for pump stations. This is one in Muscatine. I'd call it a very inexpensive one. This is a Cadillac that's in Des Moines right now on one of their main downtown areas. These are in Coralville, and I'd call them middle-of-the-road pump stations, would you say? They're not architecturally significant, but they're very effective. Our thoughts are, and I know Jim has said we have to be careful with money. Right now, we know this first phase is running over money. How are we going to save money in the future? My thoughts are we build a pump station like this, where it's similar to this. It's an enclosure. It's not a building. The pump station, the generator inside, you make the architecture kind of look like what the other buildings are down there. You pretty it up a little bit on the inside, but it's certainly not something like that. And I think we could save $250,000 on each pump station by doing them this way. So we have two of them, we could save $500,000 by not putting them in nice buildings and putting them in so they're kind of an outdoor type of pump station with a generator. I think you have to have a generator for this type of project. So that's
Just curious, how much for the Toyota in the left-hand corner? How much you save on that jobby?
Oh, you mean this one?
Yes, sir.
I'll have to get back to you on prices, but I think it could be more.
I was just, really, for the Escort?
You could, yes. I saw one in Milan, Illinois. These pump stations have definitely caught my eye lately. I saw one in Milan, Illinois that basically didn't even have any kind of a building hardly. It looked like the flow comes to a big manholes and then it pumps and the pipes come right up out of the ground and right over. Now that's the cheapest way you could possibly do it, but in your case, there is some option to pump from manholes. You'll be behind a thing, and to either put it right in your box and have it so you won't even see it. So I'll come back to you with some options. That's something that we're definitely very interested in, is what could we do? Because the first one's going to fit in behind the auditorium. So it's going to be out of sight a lot of times. So we could see on that one. So that's all I had, unless somebody has questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Leo.
He mentioned the cost on this is in that 7 million range. Well, we have to wait and see what we get for bids back. It'd be nice if it was lower than that. We borrowed just over 5 million for this phase. If the costs do come in at that 7 million phase, we've talked about the need next calendar year to do a second borrowing to cover the remainder of this project. We're capped out for what we can borrow this section anyway, plus we don't know where those numbers are actually gonna come in at.
So you borrow, and then the grant money pays it back eventually?
Correct.
Okay. I really do, I mean, I don't mean to be weaseling on you, but this is a very challenging project for bidders to bid. Not many people drive H-piling 50 feet, that many. We do it all the time. Every pump station has driven H-pile a lot of times. But to drive the amount that are gonna be driven for this project, we're hoping we get a nice low bid, because somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got to mobilize. You know, a lot of times when you do borings, it costs you $2,000 to do the first boring, and then $200 a boring afterwards, because it mobilized to get, so we're kind of hoping we get that kind of big benefit, but we haven't shown it yet. We have not shown that. We showed it as, here's how much it is to, we called around, we talked to Black Hawk Foundations, is one of the biggest pile driving companies. They're out of Moline, I believe. We talked specifically to them, and the number we used was a number they said that we should use. So we think that's a reasonable number. Sometimes they tell engineers one number, and then when bidding time comes and they think there's competition, who knows?
Do you have to build a temporary flood wall in order to work on this, to keep the water back, or can they just go right?
We're leaving your river wall in place. So your
Okay.
river wall should protect you.
All right,
And then we're telling them they have to work in the dry, so they're gonna have to pump. And depending on what river levels are, depending on how much, that's another risk for them. It's a hard risk of how much they're gonna charge for that.
yeah.
Some guys take little risk and they charge a lot and they don't get the bid. You know, you don't know. I know one, the bidder that built the Atumwa project for us, which is very similar, will be bidding on this project for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any
Thank you,
questions?
Leo.
All right. Number 5, consideration of plans and specifications for the 2017 depot storm sewer improvements.
Okay. Jesse Howe, city engineer again. So what we have in front of you now is the plans and specs for the depot storm sewer. Basically, what we're doing with this project, the existing drainage drains to the south and through BNSF's property. It has some known issues in it, and it's basically to the point where it provides a slow trickle out. When we get big rain events, water ponds on the south side, and we do have a water problem under the building where we'll get, I think, 2 to 3 feet of water under the building in the crawl space, which, from talking to a few people, that never used to happen 10 years back. So to remedy all that, we are putting in new lines and draining everything to the north to our storm system to get it out of the vicinity. Again, like I said, it'll eliminate all of our ponding issues that we're currently experiencing. Next switch. The quick and dirty summary on this one, the engineer's estimated cost is $368,000. The budgeted funds for the 17-18 sewer miscellaneous rehab is $500,000, so we're well within budget. I do expect those numbers to come in a little bit less after I reviewed their engineering estimate. They used pricing that's typically higher than we see in southeast Iowa, but I guess we'll see. Tentative schedule on this, if everything goes according to plan, we would receive bids in mid-May, award a contract June 7th, start construction June 19th, and finish September 8th with 60 working days allotted for the project. Anybody got any questions?
That takes in not just the facility itself, the roof, takes in the roof drains off of Amtrak?
Yeah, basically, we're providing a place where all of those roof drains and everything could be funneled back into the storm outlet to the street. That's what's eliminating all the ponding water under the building.
That was one of the things they had a concern with us, was coming up with and addressing an issue they were having, if they were to ever get to their project of rehabbing those structures.
How long are we holding our breath for that?
5 years so far, I have.
All righty, you guys good?
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks, Jess. Number 6, resolution approving the mayor's participation in Fireball Run and authorizing the expenditure of funds to participate. So we have our friends from the chamber. You guys want to come on? Come on down.
Good evening, Jason Hutchison with the Greater Burlington Partnership, which operates the Convention and Visitors Bureau here in our community. And with me is Chelsea Toll, the director of the CVB. And thanks for the opportunity to come and give you some insight into Fireball Run and perhaps shed some light on a couple of things. So I do want to talk about Fireball Run, really what it is. And Fireball Run is a travel adventure series where the participants and those watching the show really discover what they call is the undiscovered places. So they don't go to Disney World, they don't go to Las Vegas, they go to places like Fort Dodge, Iowa, and places like Burlington, Iowa, to show the world, really it has a global audience, what communities in this country have to offer. And so this isn't The Price is Right, this isn't Wheel of Fortune, this is not a game show. In fact, I would say that calling it a game show is really a reckless mischaracterization of Fireball Run. But now it is true, there are teams as a part of this. So the show follows teams that travel throughout the route. And there are roughly 40 teams. Many of the teams, most of the teams are made up of either celebrities or high-profile individuals or high-net-worth individuals, typically owners of large companies or executives from those companies. And that helps build some of the aspects of the show. But they really go on a 7 or 8 day adventure where they're stopping at different communities along that route, doing neat things in those communities. We would certainly show off Snake Alley. There would be a number of amenities in our community that a worldwide audience hasn't discovered yet, and this is our opportunity to show them that. So it is streamed on Amazon Live, so anyone who's got an Amazon Prime membership has access to that. In the United States. Now, internationally, it's actually broadcast on network television in a number of countries across the globe. So it is an internationally syndicated show with a global following. And the CVB is really involved because we learned that the show was considering a Midwest route this year. They take a different route every year. And so our job, one of the reasons you have a contract with us, is to promote the community to the best of our ability. And a lot of credit to team members in our office, including Chelsea, for getting them interested enough in the community to make the journey here and to see what it is we have to offer. And after spending a couple of days here, the producers really fell in love with what we have to offer. Not only do they think a global audience would have interest in it, but they were, our hospitality as a community was very generous and gracious to them. And so they thoroughly enjoyed their time here, which is great for us because that secured our spot in the series that will air in the fall of 2018. It'll be filmed in the fall of 2017. And we can't talk about where they're going in town because there is a competitive aspect. They do get clues as to the attractions, and so those 40 teams have to find out where those attractions are based upon those clues. So we can't let the cat out of the bag. We'd get in trouble for that. But so where does the mayor's participation lie in all of this? So of course we're going to rally the community around the folks come to the community. The teams discover the areas. We have a rally here where everyone from the community can come welcome the teams to our communities. There's a reception while they're here this evening in that evening. And so we're going to have lots of folks involved in this. But how about the mayor specifically? Well, when you have a pretty big event come to your community, it's great for the mayor to be involved with that. And when the mayor was here and the producers of the show were here, they were impressed with him. And I would say this whether you were in the room or not, Mayor McCampbell, but they were impressed meeting the mayor and noted that he's an incredibly charismatic individual who is able to connect with people in a way that most of us can't, and would be a great member of a team. And as a host community, we have one team. Out of the 40 teams, we're required to have one team. It helps give our local folks an ability to follow someone from their hometown in that journey across the Midwest. And so we have a 2-member team. There's a registration fee that we had to pay for. As Chelsea and I worked on the budget, we built that registration fee into the cost of holding the event. And so we had to find 2 team members. And there are certain criteria of what can classify you for the team. And as we got to thinking about it, it would be great for the mayor to be one of those team members, because on the journey, they're spending a lot of time with 39 other teams, many of which have substantial means, many of which have personal followings. And if we can have members from our community be great ambassadors during that event, it opens up all sorts of opportunities. In fact, I'll pass these around. We created booklets that every team member is going to get, showing economic development opportunities, buildings within our community that have the potential to be redeveloped, some economic stats talking about our resurgence as a community. And so I think at a point in time where our community has an incredible story to tell, and we have a mayor who is very charismatic, very passionate about this community, and able to connect that story, it makes perfect sense for him to be a part of not only the journey, but also of the celebration when we come to our community. Now, he's taken a lot of heat, I know, both personally and in public for participation in this. But I got to tell you, I think it's the job of the mayor not just to sit at the center of that table and run a meeting, but it's also the job of the mayor to tell the story of our community, especially when it's a story worth telling. And we asked the mayor to give up 8 to 10 days of his life to be on this journey representing our community. And I'm grateful that he said yes. So then it comes down to the question of, well, how does it get paid for? So we had built the cost of, it's a mandatory cost of the event. We built that into our budget. Your attorney issued a legal opinion saying that as a CVB we can't pay for that. I don't agree with that interpretation necessarily, but nonetheless, he's an attorney and he's your attorney. So I don't think you have much of a choice but to listen to him on that opinion. So what was before you then was a request to pay up to $7,500 for the mayor's participation as a team member in this. That should more than cover it. The registration fee, the mandatory registration fee, and the mandatory costs associated with that are likely going to be under $12,000 total, half of which would be less than $6,000, but it's possible. There's got to be transportation to the start of the event and back from the end of that event, and so we'd want to make sure that there were dollars there to cover that transportation, because we certainly don't want to cross any lines that we shouldn't cross in this process. So that's really, I think, why we're before you today, is perhaps to explain a little bit more about Fireball Run. I hope you'll support this. It's really a rare opportunity to showcase our community to an internationally syndicated audience. What happens if you fail to approve it? Well, I guess the mayor won't participate, and that's not the end of the world. I think it's a lost opportunity, and so, but that's your decision to make. So with that, I'll probably kick it to Chelsea if there are any questions, but anything on your mind?
So does that put you in the driver's seat with Chad then if Shane doesn't go?
I don't have any idea what we'll do. We'll have to talk to the producers about how to handle that. I don't know, but I will tell you that we'll figure it out.
You're going to go ahead regardless. I mean,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
This is a good opportunity for our community, and so we're going to participate to the fullest. They like our community, and we want to ensure that the Fireball Run groups have a great experience here.
And I think our mayor is a logical person to be a part of this, no question in my mind.
Chelsea, do you have anything to add, or were there any other questions? We good?
I guess, do you know if they have done any sort of marketing with the team members that have already been chosen? you know, with names and things like that?
Names are already on
Chelsea,
the
Tammy,
web.
come to the microphone, please, Chelsea.
The teams that have been submitted, their names are already on the Fireball Run website. But as far as marketing those out to the mass public, I don't think they have done that quite yet.
One of the questions that was asked by Jim last meeting was about the other communities in Iowa. Fort Dodge, I think, is planning on having their mayor participate. I'm not sure how Dubuque is, who's representing them as a community, but we wouldn't be the only community where that would be the case, where you have the mayor participate.
Good point, yeah.
I did have that question. They've been doing this for like 10 or 11 years. What was the deal with all the other mayors that, I mean, have
Well,
they?
this is Iowa.
Iowa has its own unique rules.
Oh, is this
on
the
how you
first
do
time they've
things.
ever been in Iowa? I thought they were in Iowa before.
It's not the first time they've been in Iowa. I don't know that any other Iowa mayors have participated as a team member in the
Okay.
past, but Cedar Rapids have they ever,
Did
twice?
it once
Once.
in 2010.
We good?
I honestly have received a lot of negative feedback about this, and if we do agree with this, I think we ought to consider when the contract comes up for negotiations with the CVB that we factor in this expense with their new contract.
Our contract with the CVB expires the end of fiscal 18. We had a 3-year contract.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's
Yes.
where it is. And you could certainly have that be a topic that you were considering when you came up with whatever your figures were for what was included in that.
And as far as in the budget this year, we have travel money available, and I would say that I would not go to the conference that I normally go to, the League of Cities conference every year. That, I think that's roughly $1,000, roughly, is it, Stephanie, can you say per person to go to that thing?
It's pretty close.
Yeah,
It's pretty close.
so I would forego that if we want to use the travel money, but otherwise, to get reconsideration from the CVB would be good too.
And there's been a lot of misinformation about this. I don't think people realize how this community should benefit from it. I mean, it's a very unique opportunity. I mean, I think it's-
It also has a lot to do with building relationships with other people. You know, if there's people in high standing somewhere else and they're chatting up with the mayor of Burlington and he's selling the city, you know, that can't be anything but good for us as far as, you know, bringing in industry, bringing in tax growth. So it's just hard for me. I know I've heard plenty of negative feedback, but people don't think about the whole picture. All they're thinking about is certain financial things that we've done recently, and this is $7,000, and that's it. They don't think about how we really are promoting the city. They really don't seem to grasp that. It's more than just him going out and solving riddles, you know? It's,
What kind of vehicle are we going to be using?
I don't have that information yet, but I'm waiting on that final word.
Okay. I had to ask.
would the mayor drive, or would he be a passenger?
I hope he's a passenger.
Actually, I'm a very good driver when I'm in the passenger seat.
Well, the final thing I'll say, then I'll get out of your hair, is once this is all settled, whatever route you decide, we as a community will have then it's on us to decide how we're going to respond to Fireball Run. And you're right, unfortunately, it's been clouded a little bit in recent weeks, but I hope that our choice, our conscious decision after this is settled, is to embrace Fireball Run and to make sure they have the greatest experience possible, because the show will be archived on Amazon Live, perhaps into perpetuity. And so Burlington's presence on that will be locked in for all of history. So it's important, I think, that we put our best foot forward.
Did you say, Chelsea, that we can use that video footage too for promotions after the fact then too?
Correct. Yes.
A lot of value.
Any other questions?
Thank you, you guys.
Thank
All
you
right,
very
thank
much.
you.
Thank
Guys,
you.
appreciate it. Okay. Next, we have a resolution amending sewer user fees effective July 1, 2017. Steph?
Yes, I'll go ahead and just talk about the next four resolutions. They're all kind of connected. These were the sewer fees that were budgeted to increase 3% in the next fiscal year, FY18. And then number 3 under consent is the solid waste fee, which is the resolution increasing the fee by the 25 cents, which again, all of that is approved in our budget. This is just formally approving the rates to be billed out. Any questions on any of those?
Good job. Let's keep it rolling. Resolution amending stormwater utility system fees pursuant to Chapter 100.02 of the Burlington City Code.
Yep, same thing, 3% increase.
You guys good? The next is a resolution amending solid waste fees effective July 1, 2017.
25-cent increase.
You guys good? And then resolution amending septic hauler fees effective July 1, 2017.
3% increase.
You guys good? Steph, you're so good.
I'm just gonna
Next, we
stay
have a
here.
resolution approving submittal of the Title VI program for the Burlington Urban Service Transit System.
Sure, this is a requirement by the Iowa Department of Transportation. We need to update this program every 3 years. So the last time you've seen this was in 2014. So basically, I've just updated the information with Nick McGregor's name. A lot of our items have stayed the same. We're still promoting it the same. We still have the same contract. If somebody would call in and doesn't speak English with the big word, they also want to know how we have a public participation plan and how we don't discriminate. So again, this is just updating. It's a plan we already have in place, but we just bring it back forward to you to update any of the information. Since 2014, we've had some tweaks in our schedules, times, and those have all been updated. Our buses, if they've changed, and the routes, if they've changed. But other than that, it's everything you've seen before. If you have any questions.
You guys good?
Thank you.
Questions?
Thank you, Steph.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. Okay, next we have a resolution authorizing entering into an agreement with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship related to a water quality initiative grant awarded for the construction of a green alley in downtown Burlington.
No one wants to talk about this. We have, your name's on this, so
No one? No one? Or Mr. McGregor?
we'll see where you go with it, and I'll see if I have to fill in.
I guess I signed it because mine was the only one around to sign it. And this grant is IDOLS. It is associated with the Green Alley project. Associated with the Tama project, they're planning on doing a green alley, and this is the second half of the alley. This is a grant match with it. I don't know the actual, is it between 3rd and 4th? 3rd and 4th, Washington and Jefferson. So this is something that we are going to be designing here. And we've already prepped on the maintenance side. I guess I don't know what else you'd want to know.
So as this project for the Tama building, they had $200,000 towards green infrastructure. They're looking at doing a green alley. I'm not sure, talking with Charlie, if they were looking to use a portion of that CDBG funding towards, they had one apartment that they're looking to do as a net zero energy usage. I'm not sure if part of that is going towards that or not. What they do have going towards the green alley in this project, as we have it structured, this is looking to, budget is at $192,000. We're looking for $75,000 from IDOLS. Out of the local, $115,000. The Tama building project would be covering about $96,000. We'd be covering about $21,000. For us, our match is, we had set aside $100,000 out of the overall flood mitigation project funds from the state to be used towards green alleys. we'd count this towards that piece.
I guess maybe an explanation on what the term green alley means.
that'd be good.
Because I had a phone call thinking that we were going to put it back in grass. Ultimately, what it means is we would go in there and tear out the existing, do some grade prep, and Leo might be able to explain it better than me, but there's some tile work system that ultimately helps add capacity and cleans the water, but it's permeable pavers. So it's still a hard surface alley. So I guess that's probably the easiest way to explain it.
Do we ever get pictures of what that looked like?
If you want to pull up the Facebook page, there's actually a link on that. And that maybe shows just a visual representation on what it could look like.
Somebody, I got stopped the other day and somebody asked me, what's the city doing paying for painting alleys? Why are we painting alleys? I said, I didn't know we were painting alleys. Nick, why is the city painting alleys?
That's a
Why
good
are we-
question. I don't have that answer.
Okay.
I know the Burlington Partnership Leadership class is doing some cleaning, where they might be painting over top of some graffiti, but the city is not painting any alleyways, not to my knowledge.
One you had back there with the brick in the middle?
Yeah, it'll come up here, maybe.
There we go. So as you can see off to the right, they have a concrete outline where they put permeable pavers in between. And what it does is essentially allows water to flow over the surface and then go in between the crevices and then filter in through the rocks. It has a cleaning mechanism to it going through the rock bed, but also adds a lot of capacity for storm water.
Questions?
And we're doing this specific alley because of the TEMA building.
In conjunction with it, but there is a bigger plan for green alley presence, but also, bioswales, the overall green infrastructure. With the SRF funding that we'll be using for a lot of the sewer separation, comes with a 1%. I don't know my percentages.
1%.
1%, not 10%. That'd be a lot of money. 1% of the interest or the amount of money that we spend can go back towards green infrastructure projects, of which a green alley is one of those examples.
In terms of this alley specifically, with the TAMA project, they had the CDBG funds to do a green alley, but that was immediately adjacent to their building. In order to see the whole alley be done, it required us to be participating, and you get a better product if you have the whole
Well, sure,
alley.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah,
You guys good?
sure.
Okay. Next, we have a resolution approving an amendment of access agreement with Max Convenience Stores LLC for granting access to the subject premises for the purpose of locating a remediation station and conducting environmental investigation and remediation work.
This is a continuation of an existing agreement that we've had in place for 2 or 3 years. If you look through the wording on here, they completed their Tier 1 work some time ago, and they've been continuing with the Tier 2 monitoring. They still have some additional requirements from the DNR prior to them being able to have full closure.
We good?
We don't have, from a staff perspective, there aren't any issues with continuation of this.
Okay.
Okay, we've got some public hearings. The first is a consideration of a permanent encroachment agreement with the Art Guild of Burlington, Inc. for encroachment into city right-of-way adjacent to the property located at 301 Jefferson Street, Burlington, Iowa. Mr. Tisland.
We'll have an application they're looking to do art installation adjacent to the art center.
All right. I'm just going to zip through these. If you have anything you need to. Letter B, consideration of an ordinance vacating and selling a portion of Spruce Street right-of-way located west of South Main Street and a portion of alley right-of-way located north of Spruce Street and west of South Main Street, Burlington, Iowa. C is consideration of plans and specifications for the 2017 Seal Coat Streets program. D is consideration of a 2017 amendment to urban renewal plan for Burlington Consolidated Urban Renewal Area related to Apollo property disposition. and is consideration of acquisition and development agreement related to urban renewal project in connection with Apollo property disposition. Okay. Discussion items. Recycling program, Mr. Hal Morton.
Thank you very much. I am Hal Morton, Executive Director of the Des Moines County Regional Solid Waste Commission, and it's been a while since I've been before this august body. I'm here to give an overview of what it is that we provide for the City of Burlington and our other members. Start off by laying down the law. According to state law, it is state policy to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Iowans, to provide the most practical and beneficial use of the material and energy values of solid waste, and to follow the waste management hierarchy, which you've probably seen before, looks like this, with the most attention on conserving resources and the least attention on wasting resources. It specifically places responsibilities on every city and county in the state based on, again, on this waste management hierarchy. Each city is required to provide a comprehensive solid waste reduction program based on the hierarchy, and you can't leave out any parts like the landfill for final disposal at the end. But state law provides that cities and counties don't have to do it on their own. They can, but they can also join together to do it cooperatively with other cities and counties. The mechanism for doing that are permits of landfills and transfer stations and comprehensive solid waste plans. Landfill permits will not be issued or renewed unless they meet all of the technical standards and are accompanied by a comprehensive plan that documents that every local government using that landfill has implemented landfill diversion programs like those listed below, and those are based on the waste management hierarchy. Comprehensive plans have to be updated every 5 years, just like permit renewals, and they must describe the extent to which solid waste is or can be recycled within that service area, the expected environmental impact of the programs provided in that area, a specific plan and schedule for implementing those programs, and specific details of local recycling programs to meet the state volume reduction goals, and that separate at least glass, paper, plastic, and metal. So that's kind of the fundamentals of state law. And the local governments in our area decided that it was better to approach that jointly. And in 1990, they formed our commission. We're a 28E intergovernmental agency. We now have 12 member cities now that Mount Union has ceased to be a city. We used to have 13. And then Des Moines County as well. We are funded not by taxes, but by fees, the tipping fees at the landfill, for instance, and the per household fees, which are assessed to each member government based on the most recent household count in their service area, and those cover all of the programs that are not directly related with operating a landfill, such as recycling, collection, and processing, public education, business outreach, household hazardous waste management, those sorts of things. Our population is about 55,000. City of Burlington is roughly 46% of that. And our waste stream, which includes household and commercial and industrial non-hazardous waste, is 55,000 tons a year. It fluctuates a little bit. What do we do? Well, we manage MSW, or municipal solid waste, and the definition of that includes household waste, demolition and construction waste, and the non-hazardous commercial industrial waste. We also manage all of the residential recyclables generated in our area, and many of the commercial recyclables as well that are brought to us. We own and operate 2 facilities, the DMC Regional Landfill, which includes the HAZChem Center of Southeast Iowa, and Area Recyclers, which is our hub for recycling activities, including curbside collection, the processing and marketing of those recyclables, and from our drop-off locations throughout Des Moines County, and from businesses that either direct haul recyclables to us or contract with a hauler to bring recyclables to us. And then we process and market those materials, and we have a gift store featuring items made from recycled or reused items. Let's talk about recycling specifically. That's a big interest in our program, and any recycling system includes 3 main segments. The collection, how are you going to gather the material? How are you going to process it? and how are you going to market it after you've recovered it. And let's look at each of these components, but taking into account the scale of the program, how that affects what choices you make, the convenience to the customer, the engagement with the customer, and also think about capital expenses, labor expenses, and physical obstacles to the different methodologies. The simplest form of collection is a drop-off, and we have 8 of those throughout Des Moines County and 1 out at area recyclers. As you can see, it doesn't require a lot of equipment, doesn't require a lot of labor. There's nobody standing there to interact with customers. That also means you have very little engagement with the people that use it. You don't even have to live in our area to use those. People that work here or travel through are welcome to use the drop-offs. And if they throw the wrong materials in there, we have very little opportunity to communicate with them and try and set them straight on that at a drop-off system. The convenience factor on those is that they're available 24/7. You don't have to wait for your collection day. Moving up the scale to a more complicated collection network is a curbside sort program like we use in the 12 cities that we serve. We sort the materials at curbside. It is convenient in that we come to your curb, but you have to wait for your collection day, which is every other week. So it depends on how you want to look at convenience. In terms of engagement, it gives us the maximum ability to communicate with the individual participants. If somebody's putting the wrong material in their bin, we will leave it with a note explaining how they should recycle. If we see them out there, we'll talk with them and educate them about the proper way to use the program. And of all the collection systems, that one gives you the most direct contact with the public to do that. In terms of expense, it requires more equipment than drop-off recycling. It requires more labor than the other collection methods. But you can do it just about anywhere. Now, some areas in the state, most notably the urbanized areas, and most recently the Quad Cities, have implemented single-stream recycling, and there's been a lot of excitement about that in those areas. We're in the same media area, so you've probably heard about it as well. Single-stream does not require the customer to separate recyclables from recyclables. They put them all in one big bin, and they're collected by an automatic collection truck, which reduces labor costs. It's a little bit higher on equipment costs, but you can get more households on a route that way. So as your housing density builds up, that becomes a much more practical way to collect recyclables. We'll talk about the processing in a minute. Our recycling center is what I would call a low-tech material recovery facility. As you see here, see if I get the laser working, we have one sorting line for plastics. Everything else that comes in is already pre-sorted. We pull out any junk that's in there and we bale it or we load it loose and it's out of there. Not a lot of machinery involved and fairly minimal labor involved in running our facility as compared to a high-tech MRF. And if you visited the new one at Des Moines or at Davenport, it's beautiful. This isn't it, but it looks very much like this. The material comes in mixed together. It requires lots of sorting lines, lots of conveyors, lots of robotic equipment, and even lots of labor to handpick and process that material. It also requires a lot more, not just to construct and operate a facility like this, but to maintain all of those gadgets and robots and machinery that's there. I would be remiss if I didn't include one other collection technique that has been attempted in a couple of cities in North America, and that is don't separate anything, just put it all in the garbage truck. You only have to run one truck around town, and then you take it to a building where you dump it out and somebody has to sort through it.
Man, that's a fun job.
I have been to some facilities, they aren't quite as bad as this one, but you get the general idea that they are pretty nasty places to work, and you end up with a resulting material or a line of materials that has quite a bit of contamination in it.
Oh, my God.
Now, a drop-off container can go to any of these kind of facilities to be processed, but you would logically go to the least expensive, which is the low-tech MRF. Curbside collection, the same way. It's already pre-sorted. We don't need to do a lot of processing. Single stream has to go to a high-tech MRF because it's all mixed together. So as you get that bigger population base, the more houses on a route, you save money on collection, but you spend more on processing. You also have more households to spread that cost over. So that's why it makes sense in places like Des Moines or Quad Cities. And as you can imagine, material that was never mixed together to start with is cleaner. It's going to be more valuable in the marketplace than the material that has been mixed. I'm going to speed through these next couple, but our planning area includes a lot of these different kinds of terrains. This is actually in Des Moines County. Much of our service area looks like this. And you can see the houses are pretty far apart. If we were to try and run curbside collection in those areas, it would be very expensive per house to provide that level of convenience. We have a lot of small towns. This is Mediapolis. And curbside collection does make sense in a place like this, but it would be difficult to justify automated collection with all the expense on the processing end of things. If we were West Des Moines, on the other hand, curbside sort would get out of hand in a hurry. You really need to get the more houses on the route and so forth. So where do we stand? We have a well-respected comprehensive program, waste reduction program and plan. We have a well-designed and operated landfill. When I started 21 years ago, we estimated our lifespan, design life, remaining at about 60 to 65 years. We've been able to stretch that 20 years later to 84 years due to increases or improvements in design technology, in compaction, and in success from our recycling programs. Our recycling and diversion programs have hovered between 40 and 45% since the late 90s. That's among the best in the state. And we have a HAZChem center that works quite well for free for our residents and at cost for small generators in the commercial sector. In terms of numbers, we process about 200,000 pounds per month of paper. It comes in mixed like this at curbside, and that's how it goes out. We load it loose onto trucks. We can meet the weight limits in the trucks that way. It goes to Indiana where it's turned into Chinette plates and drink trays. Very little processing.
It's turned into what?
The Chinette plates and drink trays, like you get it
That's
for
great
carryout.
to know. That's awesome.
Mixed glass. We process our own mixed glass out at the landfill. We pulverize it into a 3/8 aggregate that we mix with sand and use as a drainage medium when we're building new cells at the landfill.
Cool.
We also sell it as a sparkly designer landscape mulch in place of pea gravel. Metal cans. Being a deposit state, we don't see very many aluminum cans in there, so it doesn't pay for itself to, it would be simple enough to separate ferrous from non-ferrous cans. But because there's so few aluminum ones in there, it doesn't make sense to even do that much processing. We bring them in like this and we bale them about 30,000 pounds a month. Corrugated.
30,000 pounds a month?
Yes.
It's crazy.
Corrugated cardboard, we get this from curbside and drop-offs, but we also get it from a lot of our retail merchants in town. And it's the most valuable fiber in the recycling stream. And we bale that at about 200,000 pounds per month. Plastics. We have always collected number 1 and number 2 plastics because those make up over 90% of the plastic stream in our town, in our area or any other area. That's about a little over 90% of the plastics by weight. We added number 5 plastics a few years ago because it was an increasing proportion of the plastic stream. Now, we granulate our plastics. We get a higher dollar value for it. You can only get away with that if you have an established reputation for low contamination levels in there, and we've been able to establish that and maintain it. We produce 100,000 pounds every quarter of the number 1 and 2 plastics. But even though number 5 plastic is our 3rd most common plastic, it takes us nearly a year to accumulate a truckload. So when you think about recycling all the plastic numbers, 3, 4, 6, and 7 together would be less than that 5, that number 5 number there. Think how much storage space you'd have to have if you were trying to recycle that in a population the size that we serve.
Okay, that answers my question, but the next question I would have is what happens if the plastic comes in not clean?
Well, we sort the plastics, and we do ask that they be reasonably rinsed. They don't have to be washed or run through the dishwasher. And we have to remove the caps. We would prefer people left the caps off entirely because they're usually a different kind of plastic.
Right.
And we're having to remove those on the line. If they're really filthy, they'll put them in the reject pile.
Reject. Okay.
Yeah, but typically, we're sorting by type of plastic, those numbers, and by colored or uncolored, because they have different commodity values. As you can see here, we have soap jugs, detergent bottles in that first one, milk jugs in the second, green soda bottle type bottles, clear soda type bottles, and I can't tell what the farthest one is. But that's how we market it, and we can get a lot more weight in a load by granulating than by baling. When you bale plastics, you're going to send them to somebody who's going to have to do further processing and separate them by type. So it's lower market value. Now, what are the benefits of being a member of our commission in particular? Well, we have the established permitted landfill that was requirement number 1 in state law. We have an established MRF, or recycling center, and the good thing about having our own is that when the markets go on a protracted skid, as they have been known to do, private ones or ones that you don't control can shut down and stop taking recyclables, or they can reduce certain materials that they decide are no longer economically viable. That really messes up your participants if they're used to recycling certain things and it's on again, off again. We've been able to avoid that by running our own and keeping it operating continuously. We provide curbside recycling collection in each of those 12 cities, household hazardous waste facility that's free to residents. We provide the community cleanup credits that Burlington has been very adept at using over the last several years, not just for spring and fall cleanup, but for derelict building cleanup, riverfront cleanups, those sorts of things, special projects. Burlington has 3 seats on our commission board. Each of our member governments has the ability to appoint 1 representative to that board. Burlington gets more because you're bigger. And we've proven to be a secure long-term investment. Now, what happens when a member leaves? And we kind of got into this a little bit with Mount Union, although that's not a normal process. They cease to exist, so we had to telescope it. But we actually have a section of our bylaws that describes the process. If a member city or the county were to express a desire to withdraw today, the effective date, according to our policy, would be July 1st of their request to withdraw. From that point, it's a 3-year process to get out. And that's because we're planning long-term in our budgets. We're making investments and planning infrastructure on a much longer than a 3-year basis, but that gives us some ability to kind of ease through it. So during that 3-year period, that member is still obligated to send their waste to us, as they have been up to that point, and to receive all of the services that we currently provide, which is the recycling, the household hazardous waste, and all of those things. That stays as it goes forward. At the end of that 3 years, they have to pay off the remainder of their pro rata share of commission debt. As I mentioned, Burlington, as an example, is 46% of our population base. Based on the experience we went through with Mount Union, the way we would look at the remaining debt at this point, we have some bonds out there. You remember 2006 to 2010 when they changed the landfill rules on us, hit us pretty hard, and we had to go into debt. We borrowed a lot of money from the county. We will be paying that back in full this June, so that will be done. Then we have the state revolving fund loans. We still have about $4.25 million in principal and interest to pay off on that after the end of this fiscal year. We've just been paying interest up till now. So that would be remaining debt as of this July. It's have to be readjusted annually through that 3-year period. Closure post-closure obligation. By federal and state law, every landfill has to have closure post-closure financial assurance set aside, and in Iowa it has to be in cash form ultimately, but you can buy in incrementally over the design life of your landfill. That means we now have 84 more years to finish paying into that in the normal score of things. We have some put aside already. The rest of it we cover annually through a local government guarantee, which is a formula of debt to asset ratio, and by purchasing a, help me out, what is it? A line of credit, irrevocable line of credit, basically. And So every year, the state requires us to hire a third-party engineer to re-estimate what it would cost if the landfill closed that year. And rules can change, that the definition of closure and post-closure can change from year to year. So those are adjusted. It's not just a matter of how much have you paid in, it's a matter of, okay, what's the estimate that year? So that would have to be calculated on a running basis as well. Right now, based on this year's closure post-closure assessment, we would owe in the neighborhood of $3.33 million to go. So a withdrawing member would have to pay their share of all of that at the point where they sever ties with the commission. And they would have to cover all of the attorney's fees and any administrative fees that might result from that. If we have a significant change to our comprehensive plan, then we have to file an amended comprehensive plan before the next due date of the regular comprehensive plan. Our next one is due in about a year, or a year and a half from now. So that's that 5-year cycle. Anyway, that's what we've come up with so far, and the member that leaving would have to forfeit its share of capital investment in property and equipment to date, and of what we've paid into post-closure funds. And they would, regardless of whether they leave or not, nobody gets out of long-term liability under EPA rules. If anything happens at any point in the future, anybody that's used that landfill can be held for reckoning for their proportionate share of that. And that's not where the fun ends. If somebody withdraws, then they still have to provide these same programs. They would have to designate a landfill that they're going to take their waste to, or establish their own and get it permitted. And I can tell you, in the 21 years I've been here, there have been no new permits for landfills in Iowa.
Not one?
Not one. Not that I'm aware of. There have been expansions, but there have not been any new ones. In Iowa, if that landfill is in Iowa, then the city or county that's leaving would have to join the comp plan that goes with that landfill. And that probably would involve buying into assets that that commission has. It would also involve showing that they are providing all the programs that are detailed in that comp plan. If they chose a landfill that's out of state, then they would probably have to build, permit, and operate a transfer station. And they would have to file their own comprehensive plan, which includes that description and schedule of landfill diversion programs. So those are all the things that the commission already provides to its members. That would have to be covered in addition to all of the buyout procedure on that. Kind of ties it back to the state law. So be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Hal, you're a rock star. We're blessed to have you. Let me say that first and foremost.
I don't have any questions.
I just want to say for the record, somehow people think that I'm against recycling. I'm not against recycling. I was just looking at some stuff, but good information. And we do appreciate what you do. Thank you.
Well, appreciate you all as well.
It's a complicated system.
Yeah.
DNR has made that more and more so as time has gone on.
Yes.
You had some significant changes that hit in the 90s. You had some significant ones that hit in the mid-2000s.
2006-07.
And
those hit us particularly disproportionately harshly compared to the rest of the state. And that just was the luck of the geometry of our landfill and where the expansion area was relative to the old landfill at that point in time.
I think that was about the time that I was on that commission. It was like, what are we doing here?
It was not pretty, and I don't think it was well thought through, and I think now they're actually backing off to a position more consistent to what I was advocating at the time, but we've spent a lot of money in the meantime to get there.
Yeah.
The good news is that as we go through our annual budget process, and we adopt ours in May, we are getting to the stage where we can envision being on a cash flow basis again in the future.
Good.
So we're getting to where the end of the balance sheet looks black instead of red.
That's good.
So that's a very good thing, and
We're
we hope to
familiar with
continue
that
moving in that
concept.
direction.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're trying to follow.
So any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al Morton. Thanks for taking the time and coming down. We'll keep right on rolling along. Pull Dome, Mr. Freeling.
And Mrs. Abu-Wasla. What we've been doing is trying to put together some money, and we've had some fundraising efforts that are working pretty well. And part of that is we're applying for a CAT grant through Vision Iowa. And so we're intending to put an application in September for that grant. And part of what they require is the city to show some support for the project and the county. And we're still talking about $500,000 overall. And the number that gets thrown out as what would be helpful to get that grant is $100,000 level of support from the city. And that does not have to happen all in 1 year like we were talking about originally. That could be spread out over 5 years. But with talking with Eric, it sounds like what they would like to see is a resolution saying that the city is willing to provide $100,000 worth of support over the next 5 years. And I guess we don't know exactly how the details of that works, but there's already money budgeted towards that pool over the next 5 years, but I guess it's probably a question for Jim as to how this works from here, but that's what we're here to ask for, I guess.
The previous time that you were here, I don't remember the city being asked to contribute anything towards the project.
That's correct, yes. Now we are.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait a minute, I don't remember that.
Surprise. The grant would cover
Yeah, and
20%
the grant will cover 18 to 20% of the cost of the project
But
as
to
well.
get the grant, we have to show
But,
city
yeah.
support, county support.
As you look at having this in place, Eric, there was some discussion about a need to take down lighting and take down fencing each season.
Yeah, that's
No, well, the
part of
lighting
the-
possibly, but not
yeah.
fencing. The fencing would be reconfigured to match up with the structure.
I guess just in general was some of the discussion about, you'd gotten a plan together, kind of a plan for the pool dome and how that would impact, I guess, whether the city cost or operational cost, what those were, and then kind of long-term operational costs as well. Just some general questions on that.
In the pro forma that you had presented with the numbers of folks, the teams coming over and lessons and stuff, how does that compare with the amount that's over at the Y now?
There were 90 kids on the swim team this year at the Y, all local kids. We just started a USA session from April to July, and there's 50 kids in that. Are half of those from out of town?
Yeah, right now, the ones that are from out of town are roughly around half, right now, actually are coming from Fort Madison, Central Lee, Mount Pleasant, Mediapolis, Danville, several acute towns in Illinois, Biggsville, Aquaka, and there's another town I can't remember at the moment, but, so there has been a lot of interest. We also, I mean, even today, I just took 2 more calls today of families that are interested and wanted, and are planning to sign up. So as this grows, I mean, we are getting more and more interest. I'm also hearing from several community members that have stopped me. I got a phone call a few weeks ago of organization that wants to apply for a community grant for us that would go towards the bubble as well. We would know in July whether we would receive that or not.
So out of the folks that are using the Y now with your program, about how many of them would be moving over? do you
Well,
see?
what we have proposed always with the Y is we want to work together on this program. There's, actually, we just came back from state and regionals, and Walnut Creek out of Des Moines is a Y program, but they also are a USA program. And that's what we have always, they're not formally, but they work together. And that's what we have always said with the Y, and that's what we want to see. Right now, from our Y team, I think we're just over 20 kids right now that are doing the USA program. That still leaves, out of the 90 that we had in the season, that still leaves 70 kids, which is where we normally were.
And I would guess most of those 20 would still swim Y
Yeah,
during the Y
and-
season.
Exactly.
If-
And that's what we have always said with the Y. I mean, we want this to be a joint effort. It's never been a competing program. I mean, we're.
Probably
you
share
know,
coaching as well.
So you're looking at having this come forward with support from the Y then?
Yeah, we've talked to Andy at length, and so, yeah.
We've been in constant
I guess we could
communication.
we would talk to them, but if it needs something a little more formal, we could work towards that.
Yeah, just a concern there to make sure that we're not damaging their program as part of it.
No. And we have been in constant communication with them as far as what we're doing and wanting to work together. And,
you know, we have to work together. So, I mean, because for
Would
both
that-
programs to survive, I mean, really, and again, the USA program is a higher level competition. Not every kid wants that. Not every swimmer wants that, and it's, certain kids want a Y program, certain kids want a USA program. They can swim in both, or they can do one or the other. And there's definitely room for both, and like we're seeing with this USA program right now, almost half of them, or right around half, I don't have the exact numbers, are from their surrounding communities. So, and I think we're going to be getting more from Illinois and Fort Madison and the other surrounding towns.
Have you raised some money?
Yes.
Yes, we have. I forgot to ask if we could publicly announce the donations.
We probably better
we've
not say
gotten,
exactly
so
what
I don't
we-
want to
All
say
right.
right now, but
Okay.
we received
We're moving right along.
we've gotten a very generous.
We feel good about that.
Contribution from an entity here in town, but I really don't want to disclose it
Okay,
unless
fine.
because
I withdraw the
forgot to
question
ask.
at this time.
Having been on that Vision Iowa board, I know that it's very, very particular about showing community support, and you're not going to get very far if you're not.
Well,
We're
and-
working with Tracy Lamb
You
at
got it.
Southeast Regional Planning, and she said, yeah, it's
Okay.
kind of a game stopper to
Yeah.
not have.
Right.
And, we're hoping to, I have also heard from another community organization that may be interested in helping out too. So, we're hoping that with the grant, if we are showing potentially right now, and this is without even branching out too much, asking for money, if those three organizations come through, with the funding, that's community support in itself too.
Right.
But, this grant would definitely be a huge, if we can, 20% of it would be
Right.
huge.
Yeah, for sure.
What else would you need from us to kind of move forward, or I guess that's what.
I guess one of the biggest concerns that, from a staff perspective, $100,000 match, we've got a CIP program that is booked out for 5 years and still doesn't meet, I mean, this would be coming out and competing with the rec programs, stuff that Eric is doing, and where you'd fit that in and what that would mean you'd have to bump.
I guess part of our discussion was whether some of those items that are already in the CIP, if those can be used for match, or if it has to go directly to the dome. If we're doing deck improvements or other improvements, can that be used as the match? Or does it have to go
And
specifically for it?
some of the deck improvements would really probably need to be done as part of the project that we're talking about, so that wouldn't need to be done by the city, and then there's some other things that are in the budget that just need to be done anyway, so, yeah, there's some of that we kind of need to go through with a little more detail to work out as far as those things go,
But, I mean, as long as you can figure out how to make that match work, if you're coordinating with projects that you're already doing, that's helpful. Still have a concern to make sure that we're not taking on a higher operating cost long-term. We just can't afford a higher operating cost. And making sure that you have, that we're not gonna harm existing program in the process of doing this at the Y. Just somehow there has to be some level of cooperation to make sure that.
well, would it be helpful if we got a letter from either the board or from Andy saying
Yeah,
that they're.
I think that would,
Yeah,
but,
that'd be good.
and then I don't know how we get some level of assurance on operating costs long-term.
The budget we've been working for ongoing costs is budget neutral as far as the city is concerned, right? But at the same time, we're dealing with some unknowns as to level of enrollment and things like that. So I mean, to say that we got all the answers 5 years from now is just probably not fair to say, but we feel pretty good about the projections based on other programs in other towns and from the people who have been helping put the program together, so.
Did you, when we were talking the other day, we were talking about what effect the long-term impact on the pool itself would be?
I think that's something, just some sort of draft agreement to start to get these down of what are the responsibilities and costs and who's managing it. I think that might be a good step to make sure we're both clear on both ends of, are you taking it for 9 months? Are you looking at 12 months? What's our staff involvement? What's the long-term costs? And I think that, we've talked about that, but start to get something down where we can work off of and really identify who's responsible for
And
what.
I think you'd almost have to have a buyout in there, or a spot that stops the program if if the city's costs are escalating as a result. The problem I see with that, though, is if you go after the Vision Iowa funding, you're committed to that for 15 years. So if you're gonna be in a position where
If it's
if
sinking,
you
yeah,
do
there's no way out.
that, if they're not able to cash flow it, somebody's gotta come up and keep that program running.
Okay.
That's a bigger risk than what was being asked for before. And somehow that has to be figured out, how you're handling that.
Right, because then you have to repay, if that grant has to be repaid if you don't meet the requirements. The very first meeting I went to on that Vision Iowa board, some community did not meet the requirements, so they were on notice to repay, so that was, I mean, that's an eye-opener. So.
Yeah, so you're taking on an awful lot more, and things change, we understand, but the last time you were here, you were saying no cash from the city, and now you're saying 100,000 to make a match on a grant. We understand circumstances change, but you also have to know that if you have a change in one spot, you could also have that kind of similar type thing happen on the operating costs. Even under well-intentioned circumstances, things don't always go as you're hoping.
But basically, you don't have to apply for that grant.
No,
Correct.
we thought that it would help.
Yeah.
But, with the funding, but, we realized it also was a strain on the city, so.
Yeah. Yeah, for us, that's $100,000 is significant.
It is.
Well, the $100,000 doesn't necessarily have to be that significant, depending on what he can roll into that project. The other part, though, is if you have a responsibility to carry on the project, that's another level of commitment that's there.
Long-term, yeah.
Okay.
I hope we
Yeah,
can
we'll
make
get
it
more
go,
answers as we move forward.
So
Did you
on
guys see-
our end, would it be appropriate to start at least some terms of a lease agreement so that we both have a full understanding of who's responsible for what? At least to get that in place, probably before you apply for a grant.
What is your
Have something-
timeline on that?
We were gonna apply in September. That was the intent.
Oh, we've got a ways to go. All right.
So should we work with Eric and?
You should. Council, do you want to continue to work forward on this? I mean, you're seeing, there's different risks than what we were talking about when this was brought forward the last time.
I'm still open to hear more. I'll tell you what, that 100,000, you just gut punched me, man. I'm still open to listen and see what you guys put together. Are you guys open to at least see what options are available to us on this?
Well, whatever you come up with, it needs to be ironclad, and that I don't want to see us put in the same position we were put in with the last CAT grant that we did. It had to fund $700,000 of it that was unexpected.
What was that for?
I want the Bees remodel. I want something ironclad that we're not going to put our taxpayers at risk on another project. So yeah, work with the staff and what you have, come back to us.
You've got permission, I think, and you can tell me if
To-
I'm wrong on this, to move forward, to continue to work with plans, but you don't have a commitment from the council.
Right.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
They're willing to consider something, but there's a lot of things, details that need to be worked out to make sure that they're able to be comfortable with all the long-term implications.
From what we looked at, as far as items that were already budgeted, a fair amount of that, we just kind of glanced at it, were items that would be included in the overall project that we're proposing. So I think a fair amount of that money is already allocated to things that will be done by us, or that's our assumption anyway. And I guess the other way to look at the 100,000 is you're getting a $500,000 asset for $100,000. So, that'd be another way to look at that.
It's also got to be an asset that you know how to use. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, and manage and, yeah.
Okay, it's good.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
I hope we can make it go.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Coming on down.
Thanks.
Okay, number 3, council's procedure for citizen participation.
Okay.
This is basically a follow-up from what you had on the last meeting on this. We put in your packet, you have a one-page document that's essentially out of the, I think, the city of Urbandale's. Is that what I said last time?
No, it was,
Mason City, I thought.
Not
No.
Mason City.
no, Hiawatha.
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 Out of their policy. They have a 20-some page manual of rules of procedure for council meetings, for code of ethics, for different citizen boards. But this is the policy they have specifically in regards to communications from the public at council meetings. It's here essentially for you to take a look at and consider the pros and cons and whether you want to move forward with something like this. Again, what we're trying to address is ensuring that we have a fair process for how do you make sure that you maintain decorum in a way that isn't haphazard but has a consistent policy that you can follow and is clear and can be defined to members of the public.
Yeah, I do want to say this because somebody was reading a paper, I guess it was in the Hawkeye, that said that he was berated and browbeaten down here at City Hall. I didn't take it that way. I mean, he was definitely saying falsehoods, you know, when this all went down, but I just took it that somebody was confused, but they were upset and needed to get something off their chest. Here's the way I look at it, and this is nothing against anybody else. If it was me taking the browbeating, I'll take it. I'm not for silencing anybody. If they get out of line and they say bad words or something like that and get to cussing, or it turns into ad hominem, I think that should be shut down right away. But it's, again, on that situation, it's, you know, you can say, well, it should have been shut down right off the bat, but it's hard to, you can't come down with a complaint and say, well, I've got a complaint against this department without saying that you've got a complaint against this department. I mean,
I think that's true, but I also think that there's many ways, and I've actually been on both sides of the fence and been able to express my concern and my problem in a very respectful manner. And in the past, I have been very disrespectful, and I have learned that the best way to communicate that you have a problem and an issue and you want it addressed is to do it with respect, because that's the only way you're going to be heard. Because when someone starts to get irate and pointing and raising their voice, it's a lot of people just shut down. They stop listening. Because if you're going to be rude, even though you feel you have been attacked by the city in some way, it's just, there's just only one good way for people to communicate, and that's in a calm manner with respect. And that's extremely difficult when you're angry or when you have high emotion, but that's a part of being an adult.
you also, I just want to, we need to be mindful of the climate as well. And I don't know how to say this with, I won't say that. There's no way that that's going to come out right.
Good for you.
You know, my personal feeling is that in regards to the time limit for people speaking at the end of the meetings, I'm talking about only, I'm only talking about the public comment at the end of the meetings. I'm not talking about public hearings or any of the, you know, I'm just talking about that time where we say we have any comments from the audience. I've never really ever been in favor of limiting. But now that we come to this situation where our attorney says we can't answer, we can't respond, then that changes the picture for me. To me, a reasonable time limit, and people can say what they want to hear, what they want to say, and that takes care of it, and so they don't just go on and on and on for the purpose of going on. And then yeah, you're charged with responsibility for maybe telling people that you've had enough time, but if we have a specific time limit, then that takes the pressure off of any of us to say, hey, you've gone too far, you're out of line. Your 3 minutes or whatever number you want to pick is up. That's it. That's the only reason I even want to consider a timeline, is because that has changed.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And you know, if they do have something that they want to say and it's gonna be lengthy, you know, write us all a letter, send us an email, write a letter to the editor. I mean, I read those, so
I
you'll get me
understand
in
that part
there.
too, but sometimes, I mean, if you write a letter to the editor and you still see no resolve,
Right.
all I'm trying to do is look at it as.
No, yeah, I
If I
get
felt
that.
like nobody was listening to me, this is my last stop here. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to come before the council and to say, hey, I'm upset, and, I just, yeah, I know it's not pretty, and sometimes it's making sausage, I understand that, but that's where I am.
Yeah, so you would not be in favor of, during like the end of the meeting, public comment with some sort of like time limit, just because we can't engage and, you know, express our concerns or our solutions to their problem without breaking the law.
I for one am having a lot of difficulty with with believing that we can't engage the citizens when they come up to talk to us, to ask us a question at the end of the meeting. I can't figure it out. I've been setting up here for 20 years, and it's not been an issue. I think it's somebody's way of silencing the council as well as silencing the citizen. Our job as directors for the public is to listen to what they have to say and then try to get out of them what they're saying and then try to come up with a solution. We're not taking a vote, we're not making a decision.
Yeah, you can't
If
do
someone
that.
says, how do I get my neighbor to clean up his yard? It's as simple as saying, talk to that man over there. I mean, but we can't, the impression I'm getting is we can't even communicate. We've got to sit here tight-lipped and not say a darn thing. And I know standing out there, standing at that podium, I had the same, I know the feeling. My daughter is handicapped. She's in a wheelchair. She can't walk. They parked a van in front of a ramp at the school. It was a fun fest or an open house at school. My daughter wanted to attend with her 3 kids. She couldn't get up on the sidewalk. The man that had blocked, it was a private business, had blocked the ramp, said, let me pull you up over the curb. My daughter's greatest fear is falling. She didn't want that. She said, no, I don't want that. When I went to get answers from the school principal, and ultimately from the school board, they told me they couldn't answer. Said it's got to be on the agenda, so I put it on the agenda, and when I got there to talk to them about it, they had their attorney talking for them over the telephone. Took my representatives completely out of the picture. I know they wanted to say something. They were outraged. I know they wanted to say something. They knew it was wrong, and they couldn't say it was wrong. I want to be able to sit here, if somebody's got a problem, tell them it's wrong. I want to be able to talk to somebody to say, how can we solve your problem? That's what I want to be able to do up here. If I can't do that anymore, I don't want to be a part of this. I'm here because I want to help people. I want to work with people. I want to see Burlington be the best place it could be. I want it to live what you've got on your wrist. Live, work, and play. And I can only do that when I can talk to people and when we can work things out. If I'm going to be silenced by an attorney saying I've got a fear being sued, I don't want to be a part of it anymore. So if the council is going to say, we're going to limit what people can say, I don't want anybody coming to the podium and doing what that citizen done and insulting employees and attacking employees and shaking their finger at employees. I want the mayor to control that. But any other citizens that come up that don't necessarily have complaints, that want to talk to the council, want to express their concerns, and want a response from the council, I think we should be doing that. If we're not, there's no point in us being up here. That's the most important part. The stuff we take votes on and the money that we spend and all that kind of stuff, that's not the important part. That's the end part. The important part is talking to these people out here and doing for them what they want. That's my position on this. I'm having a real hard time accepting any of this. I would like to know what Kathleen Richardson's opinion is on this. I've been told she's the most respected and most knowledgeable on this sort of thing. You can go to 50 attorneys and get 50 different responses.
I can tell you. One of these League of City meetings that I went to, one of the first years I was on the council, Kathleen Richardson was the presenter. And she told us, we were all of us sitting there, and I asked her the question, just exactly what you were saying. She said, no, you cannot respond. If someone comes up and talks to you in that public comment period, it's not on the agenda, you are not to respond. That was her position. So that's what I came back here and I told everybody on the council, and we started doing that. And then the Hawkeye or whomever out there wrote an editorial, and then they contacted her and she backtracked and said, well, you need to contact your attorney. So what are you going to do?
That's what I'm saying. She backtracked, and it was my impression that in that article, she was saying that, no, that wasn't the
Yeah,
case,
but
but you should contact your attorney.
That's not what she told us in that meeting.
Right, I understand that. But nonetheless, it's still a way of the tail wagging the dog.
And it was, at the time, one of my good friends was on the school board, and he had to sit there just exactly like you said. And I said, that just seems so ridiculous that you can't respond to the public. But now we're getting this. That was right. We can't.
For me, it's worked for 20 years sitting here.
It's not right.
I don't know why it can't continue to work.
Are you, do we have a consensus on wanting to move forward on making some adjustments on that?
Well, I don't think there's any harm in having decorum rules. I really don't see anything wrong with that, but.
That's pretty standard.
I just don't know about the time limit on speaking at the end of the meetings. And like I say, the only reason I would support that is if we have to follow this guideline that we can't respond. Now, as far as someone comes up and says, hey, I have this problem with nuisance, you can turn and say, yeah, can you look at that? We should be able to do that.
Actually, aren't there cases too where we can turn to the city manager?
The attorney said that the other day.